AMG is Mercedes' tuning division. A car bearing the AMG badge on the trunk is a thoroughbred, packed with power, but in subtle packaging. Now AMG has given the latest E-Class model a reworking. The result is a real monster. A 6-liter engine with a whacking 525 horsepower and the kick of a racing car. But an AMG Mercedes is more than a big engine. Klaus Christer of Mercedes-Benz says AMG has completely redeveloped the front and rear axle. They're using an AMG suspension with damping control, and also tweaked the brakes, exhaust, the cooling system, and even the fuel, which was modified to meet the specifications. Visually, there's little difference to the normal E-Class, but the LED daytime running lights mean the AMG is easily recognizable in the mirror. Little has changed on the sides and at the back, apart from the trademark side sills. The new design respects the elegance of the original model. Customers can choose their own wheel sets from the AMG range, but the 4-pipe exhaust is standard. The power comes from the AMG 6.3-liter V8 engine, although AMG experts say the engine is only part of the whole. Klaus Christer says a lot needed to be adjusted to integrate the engine. Firstly, it required a look at the brake system. Without the new brake system, he says, he'd rather not drive the car. That's one important aspect. But there was also the issue of the powertrain, the cooling, fuel, and other elements.
Kühlung, Kraftstoff, die ganzen Aspekte müssen dort ebenfalls berücksichtigt werden.
But it's out on the racetrack where the AMG E-Class can demonstrate its true power, coupled with an unmistakable sound. 680 Newton-meters of torque translate into enormous power, even at low revs, something normally only found in fully fledged sports cars. The top speed levels out at 250 kilometers an hour, but with the limiter deactivated, the E63 AMG can touch 300. Klaus Christer says that AMG didn't touch the safety features of the E-Class. The AMG has exactly the same safety standards as any other Mercedes-Benz. Christer says that's an important aspect of customizing cars, and one that sets their limits. Customers, he adds, are entitled to a car that meets the same standards, so AMG makes no compromises. Matte silver is the dominant color on the dashboard and the center console. On the whole, the interior, like the exterior, is an exercise in understatement. Instead of superficial opulence, the high-class materials are used to create a uniquely stylish feel. The AMG sport seats and stainless steel pedals add the finishing touch. Klaus Christer says AMG achieved what it set out to from the start, the synthesis of an executive sedan, a car for everyday use, and at the same time a vehicle that can be taken out on the racetrack and hold its own there. Green credentials were also a priority. Despite an increase of 11 horsepower compared to the previous model, fuel consumption has dropped by almost 12%. The E63 AMG is advertised as using 12.6 liters of Super Plus per 100 kilometers. Prices in Germany start at just under 106,000 euros, but with special packages designed to up the performance, that figure can quickly reach 130,000 euros. But AMG is optimistic about sales. Its previous revamp sold some 20,000 units. It's hard to imagine a city street without scooters and the noise they make. Our test driver Matas Kurat shows us two models that glide along the road in near silence. The InnoScooter EM2500L and the eMax 90S do not have an engine. At least not in the normal sense. The power here comes from electric motors mounted in the rear wheel. Matas says that means they are not only quiet, but environmentally friendly as well. But first, he wants to see how they perform. Let's start with the eMax 90S, a fusion of German technology and Italian design. The 13-inch tires are among the biggest in the scooter world. They compensate adequately for potholes and other imperfections in the road. The suspension is convincing, but the 4-horsepower engine finds acceleration hard going, partly due to the overall heavy weight. In Germany, the maximum permitted speed for these mopeds is 45 kilometers per hour. One big advantage of both models is that €1 buys enough power to cover 100 kilometers, so rising fuel costs are not an issue. From the front, there's no obvious difference between the green mopeds and their petrol-driven competition. Mirrors, headlamp, and indicators are all where they should be. Both models are fitted with disc brakes on the front wheel. The eMax has a disc brake at the back. The InnoScooter is fitted with a drum brake. And the handlebars with the instruments are also the same as on normal scooters. Apart from a small button where the electric starter would normally be. Our tester points out the booster button, which gives the motor added power and can be used on climbs or when rapid acceleration is needed. Although that has a negative effect on range. The weight difference is especially apparent on the slalom course. The blue InnoScooter is easier to steer around the pylons. The 85-kilogram weight makes it easier to use for inexperienced or light riders. And despite a slightly less powerful motor, it has the better acceleration. But with 10-inch wheels, it's probably a good idea to avoid any bumps. But despite the high price tag, the workmanship on the InnoScooter cannot quite keep pace with the eMax. A large part of the price is down to the lithium polymer battery, which weighs relatively little at 16 kilograms. With an asking price of €3,700 in Germany, the InnoScooter EM2500L is not perhaps the best value for money around. But because they have shed so many moving parts, both mopeds need relatively little maintenance. That, along with the low energy costs, go a long way to compensating for the high initial investment. Electric scooters are a real option for the future. But what does our expert reckon? Matas Kurat says both have their strengths and their weaknesses. One weakness they share is their price. The eMax 90S costs almost €3,000 in Germany. For this, says Matas, you get a solidly manufactured scooter with a lot of added comfort, but a lot of weight. With the batteries, it tips the scales at 150 kilograms. That means it is not as responsive as the InnoScooter and has a smaller range, about 50 kilometers. There is a version with a stronger battery called the 110S, which manages 70 to 80 kilometers between recharging. Turning to the InnoScooter EM2500L, which weighs only 85 kilograms and, according to the manufacturer, has a range of 100 kilometers. Matas Kurat says the advantage of the scooter is that it comes with a battery you can take out and charge at home. And of course, that's a huge advantage if you don't have an electrical socket where you park the scooter. Both mopeds are ideal for the city, where the range doesn't need to be that great and 50 to 100 kilometers are enough. But if you live in the countryside and want to ride an electric scooter, then it's probably worth waiting to see if future models have a range of between 200 and 250 kilometers. After the debut of the new 7 Series last October, BMW is now offering an upgraded engine option for the luxury sedan. The 760 Li is powered by a 12-cylinder power plant with 544 horsepower. Li stands for a longer wheelbase and interior, in this case, an extra 14 centimeters. Prices for the 760 Li in Germany start at 144,800 euros. Ford is getting personal with a new initiative called Individual. The car maker has introduced a new equipment line bearing this name that enables customers to select from an enhanced range of features and customize their own cars. Funky color schemes are among the options, even for the pint-sized car. The new individual packages are available for all models and cost 400 euros upwards. The Enstal Classic is one of the biggest vintage car rallies in Europe. It's also an open celebration of the glamour of yesteryear. This year, it again attracted over 200 entrants. What makes this car special for Ernst Piëch is that it's not exactly a Porsche, but a Rabe. Its high torque, he says, makes it ideal for the mountains. The cars, built between 1921 and 1972, belie their age as they coast up the mountain roads. The opening stage, one of the toughest in any vintage car rally, takes drivers to the Stoderzinken Peak and an altitude of 1,700 meters. And even the weather has played along, ensuring spectacular views for drivers and spectators alike. In fact, there's a prescribed time for the cars. Unusually, it's one that drivers must avoid exceeding. Ernst Piëch says he was going so fast that they had to shift down a gear. Then they were too slow, but he's not complaining. The Enstal Classic Prologue is 323 kilometers long. The appeal of the rally lies in its unique mix of celebrities and priceless cars that you would normally only see in a museum. Today, the drivers get to witness the Sulkpass, one of the most breathtaking in the Alps, in all its glory, clear skies and perfect temperatures. After 6 hours on the road, they cross the finish line in Gröbning. Day 1 comes to a close. This driver found it hot and very tiring, but evidently loved it. The drivers wake up on Saturday to very different weather. The famous Zurk Pass has been closed due to snow overnight. The temperature has dropped to just 5 degrees Celsius, and the rain is relentless. So conditions are hardly ideal. But former motorsport star David Coulthard won't let this dampen his spirits.
This is normal for me. I grew up in Scotland, so it was like this for 364 days a year. But it's not so good for the tourists coming to watch the Enstal Classic, which I'm sorry for them, but I think they had a beautiful couple of days beforehand. We're going to take the roof off this later and put on our bikinis and do a little show for the people.
This motoring extravaganza is known for attracting the eclectic mix of participants, and this year it again did not disappoint.
There's no one here, there's no one there, I still can't tell.
And as ever, the rally's organizer is very happy. On the one hand, Helmut Zwickel is sad to see the change in the weather and the snow, but this doesn't seem to have affected anybody, and he's impressed seeing all the spectators there with their umbrellas. He calls the Enstal Classic the kind of adventure that you don't find in a travel agent's brochure. The high-altitude thrills and spills of Enstal is over for another year, but next summer there's sure to be more.